if we can now go back a little bit further from before the arrest and actually maybe back to those early days in the police force in terms of like why you joined and what that was like and what you hoped to get out of it and what it was like in that precinct in the 75.
So like I'm always honest because I don't want to. I can't remember lies. So let's just be honest. The honest answer is I took the police test because I had no mentor in my profession, which was to be an accountant, and I didn't. And I wanted to have a life with a job to be able to support a wife and a child, and so I made a decision, even though it was against the decision of my current fiance at the time, who would eventually be my wife on a Thursday, shotgun wedding. But the point is that I shotgun wedding. You understand, a little backwards, but that's the way it was. And so I said, look, I need a job that can support a family. I knew being a police officer was going to be difficult, but you would figure, like my father was a fireman, so he figured out a way, and he raised 7 kids. So I thought that if I took the police job, I had mentorship in that. I had 3, 4 uncles that were police officers. My father was a firefighter, so I knew the civil service life. If I had gone into accounting and finished, which I was a pretty good accounting student, I may have gotten my CPA. I would think that I would have if I really knuckled down and would have gotten it. And then I would have been an accountant. But I had no mentorship and there was a lot of fear. So right, a lot of our decisions in our life are fear based. There was no, I wasn't beaming with confidence to go further in that career. So the confidence came with taking a civil service job. So that's where I went, and I went to the police department, and I was scared to death, but I was less fearful than trying to take on a job where I had no mentorship. Um, in the police academy, I would say I was a little bit better than average student. I was still growing into myself. I was still a relatively physically immature young man. I was just starting to gain muscularity, late to puberty, and so by the time I hit my stride, I probably wasn't until I was 23 or 24. So even then, as a police officer, I was still a little bit less than. And so a lot of people go into the abuse of power, the kid who had his lunch money taken from him, that whole scenario. No, no one took my lunch money. I didn't take the police job to get even with people because nobody picked on me. I had 5 brothers and sisters. I was a good athlete. So no one really picked on me. I just had that the slow growth spurt. So I always felt a little bit coy. Um, so because I didn't want to get myself in trouble I couldn't get out of. So that was my early part, even into my police career. By the time I became a real physical man where I could handle my even self and even be a little bit assertive, I was in my 23, 24 years of age. And at that point, I had been a police officer at least 2.5 years. And if you're in East New York for 6 months, you've done 10 years. Okay. So the experience that you would have gained in that 6 months in East New York, you're now a seasoned veteran in most places in the world. And yeah, so by the time I was 23, 24, I hit my stride both physically, police knowledge. Um, I was the guy. Everything hit just right. I had confidence. I could handle any situation. You're not invincible, but you feel it. Um, don't forget, being a police officer, maybe not today, but back then it gave you a slight edge because people didn't know what could happen to them, and they certainly didn't want to get arrested. So that always gave you a little bit of an edge in any confrontation. And then, of course, you had the radio, which gave you 500 friends, right? So that made you even bolder. So that's my beginning of my police career, where I became to take on we'll call it the cloak and the comfort of the badge and the shield and the uniform. So yeah, and at that point in my career, I began to. So this is a turning point, right? But in the beginning of my career, I really loved being a cop. Once I got comfortable in my skin, I tell the story. My first day in uniform, but I was in Queens. I was crying. I wanted to quit. I had tears coming down my eyes because I wrote someone a ticket, and I didn't want to write it, but I felt this is what we do. And I remember walking over the Long Island in Queens. There's a bridge, a small bridge that takes you over the top of the Long Island Railroad, which goes by in Corona, Queens. And I remember walking over the railroad top and looking down at the railroad and knowing it was the Long Island Railroad. And I'm a Long Island kid, right? Grew up, born in Brooklyn, but raised on Long Island. And I'm saying to myself, this is what I don't want to do this. I'm scared. I want to go home. And my mother was right. I should have stayed in school. That's what's going through my mind at 21 years old. And so it was very emasculating. It was very, so it took a while to grow into being a police officer, and it was fearful. So yeah. So there was a lot of fear, and then by the time I hit East New York, the fear waned. I do tell this story though. Driving down Sutter Avenue at 6:30 in the morning. It was either Saturday or Sunday morning, and In the Ghetto comes on by Elvis. And if I didn't have, I was almost the same feeling I had, which I tell the story about what it was like to get in the shower when I get home from prison. The tears were so filling me up that I'm driving my life. I'm giving my 20 at this time 22-year-old life up to a situation that I don't know that I can handle. And that now I'm a year and a change, a year and a half in the police department almost at this time. And it's June 13th, 1983. I'm driving down Sutter Avenue, and they're throwing dice up against the wall that would be what I would become to be known as Eugene's Bodega. And I want to go home. I don't want to do this. I and one of the things I always remembered, my father took us as a kid and threw us in the water, knowing it was over our head, and that's how we learned to swim. So, so here I am, throwing myself in the water and saying, "It's time to swim, kid." And so yeah, so those are the lessons.